as I grew up, watching a lot of fighters, learn how to box at Crunk and other gyms within Detroit, the popular thing is how to throw a really short, hook. Especially for orthodox fighters, that's what they did, is they would set up an orthodox fighter and man, you just need to crank that short hook. And so I take the opposite approach. I like to teach people first how to throw a long lead right hook, and then they can, chop that lead right hook down. So instead of, learning how to throw a really short hook, not knowing the mechanics of how to properly extend, because the only way you can land a short hook is if your opponent is really close. But if your opponent is smart enough and is out of your distance, throwing a short hook, you're not going to catch anything. So I like to teach people to throw a longer lead right hook. So when you get in your boxing stance, all you want to do is think of, as you, throw that hook, you want to turn over a little bit. So my arm is about 90 degrees, maybe about 92, 95 degrees. And then I just bring it back. That's it. And so yes, as a beginner, I teach people they need to turn, pivot their lead foot. And eventually, as they get better and as they learn more, that lead foot may stop pivoting, may not stop pivoting. So it's basically a stylistic choice of what you want to do with your front foot. But as a beginner, you should learn how to properly pivot with your front foot, turn your foot, so you can get your hips engaged and the rest of your body engaged when you throw that lead right hook. As you, get a little bit comfortable with this, because this is a very uncomfortable punch, you just want to, get in front of a mirror and just look at the mirror and think of, all I want to do is I want to just do this and come back. Just do this, come back. And so what I don't want people to do is, when you're learning how to throw the lead right hook, is you don't want to come down from here and then, throw a wild punch, because it's really bad mechanics, especially for beginners. If you want to, telegraph your punches, that's fine, but just realize you will get exposed and you will get caught. So you just want to keep that lead right hook from here and then come out with it and then just come back. So that's how I teach beginners to throw that lead right hook. Pivot, turn over. People struggle with is when they start learning the hook, and if they're shadow boxing or if they're hitting the bag, is, they shoot the hook and then they stop right here. Even though I taught you how to turn like this, that's great, but now you need to learn, once you start hitting something like a bag, you need to learn how to get behind that punch. So now the hook isn't stopping like in front of your face, it's turning over. And you're shifting that weight from your lower body, your hips, and your shoulder into that hook. So now you're turning into that hook more. And so as you learn to close the distance on the bag or close the distance against your opponent, you're going to now learn how to shift that weight into that lead right hook. Because as a beginner, you just want to learn the mechanics right now of just doing this, just learning how to turn over. And eventually, when you learn how to turn over, you want to learn how to shift all your weight into that hook. And then sometimes that foot may not turn, so you may just be here, boom, and your body just shifts into that hook. Sometimes you'll pivot. So like I said before, it's a stylistic choice of what you want to do with your front foot. But beginners, I teach that they need to turn that foot in, pivot with it so they can rotate their hips into the punch. And as I said, you want to close the distance with your hook, and you want to put everything you can behind that hook when you start hitting something. To set up my lead right hook is I'm just going to throw a jab, and then I'll build up a rhythm of just throwing jabs. And as I'm throwing those jabs, I'm building a rhythm of throwing a jab. So I'm going to throw a jab, and now I'm just step with a lead right hook. So I broke up the rhythm. So that's the first thing that you can do to execute your lead right hook as a southpaw or even as an orthodox fighter. Throw a jab, and then instead of throwing a third jab, come over with a lead right hook. And as you come over with that lead right hook, you're closing the distance, because your jab, your jab lands about here, all right? So think your opponent's head is right here, and now you need to step with that lead right hook, shift your body weight into it, and then just come back out, or keep going to the outside as a southpaw. So as you learn to execute the lead right hook, you need to learn how to vary it, you need to learn how to put your weight behind it, but more importantly, you need to learn how to time it and where to place it. Because you can close the distance with your jab and then set up that lead right hook. But what happens if, you build a rhythm, you throw the jab, and then, you throw your lead right hook and then your opponent moves out of the way. Okay, so you missed that punch that time. What do you do to ensure that you're not going to miss it the second time? Instead of just leading with the jab, you're just going to step here and then jump in with that lead right hook. And so that's how you vary it, because sometimes if you just throw a jab, and you notice that your opponent is getting out of the way because they're slick enough to get out of the way of that lead right hook, then just lead with the lead right hook. So you're here, and I jump into that punch a little bit because I want to close the distance. I already know that my opponent is going to step out of the way when I throw my hook. So I need to close the distance, and the easiest way of doing it is jumping forward, pulling my body, shifting my weight into that lead right hook. Another thing that you can do to execute and land the lead right hook is simply learn how to feint. And a very, very easy feint for beginners to do is you just shift your weight. You shift your weight like this, so you feint somebody out. You're not throwing a punch out, you just shift your weight. You figure out what your opponent does when you do that. So you need to feint once to figure out what they're going to do. Are they going to pull their head back? Are they going to pull their arms up? Do they pull all the way back, or do they just step out of the way? Or maybe some of them won't do anything. As you learn how to feint to figure out what your opponent's going to do, because he doesn't know if you're going to throw a jab, he doesn't know if you're going to throw a left hand, because you're not, half-assing it with a jab right now. All you're doing is you're just feinting with your body. Very slight and subtle feint. And the reason you do that is you want to see what your opponent's going to do. And so now you need to build the attack. And so as you build the attack, you're going to shoot a jab. I'm here. Shoot a jab. Shoot another jab. Move to the inside. Shoot another jab. Jab. I'm going to feint and come over with my lead right hook. That's it. Very simple. I want to feint, draw my opponent in, figure out what he did prior, maybe put his hands up, maybe he pulled his head back. If he pulled his head back when you feinted the first time, he most likely will do that again. And so as you feint, your opponent pulls his head back, and you leap in with that lead right hook, always keeping your left hand here, you'll be able to catch them. So what are your thoughts on the lead right hook for you southpaws? Walked you through a very simple drill that you can do to learn how to land the lead right hook. Walked you through a way that you can execute it by shifting your body weight into it. And then how do you execute it? By varying it up with throwing a jab, feinting. Let me know your thoughts down below. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos.